What truly killed the dinosaurs was not the asteroid you imagine. The real executioner arrived long after. The 6-mile stone was only the first minute of a 24-hour cascade of ruin that followed after. Close your eyes and picture a single amber eye, wide and glassy, blinking beneath a canopy of ferns. Inside its wet mirror, a new star is silently falling. No sound yet, no warning, only pressure building. A slow, low tremor in the bones of the world that does not belong to any living thing. This is the last morning of an era. 24 hours from now, everything this eye has seen vanishes. The sky, calm and golden above the swamps, was already lying to every creature breathing beneath it. As a 66 million years, on a coastal floodplain geologists would call Hell Creek, the sun rose peacefully. It had risen this way for 186 million years, the true weight of the Mesozoic.
Not a chapter, not an age, but a near eternity, long enough for entire continents to drift fully apart. Long enough for oceans to open, for dynasties of reptiles to rise, rule, vanish, and be replaced again. Un mundo che già non existe. A world that no longer exists. But this morning it existed complete. Warm mist curled between horsetails and ginkgo groves. Magnolias, still young in evolutionary terms, opened pale riverside flowers. A shallow inland sea licked the coast of future Kansas, glittering with ammonites the size of tractor tires. Herds of triceratops moved through the ferns like slow armored ships beneath the pale golden morning light. In the shadows, a young tyrannosaur padded on silent feet, its warm breath fogging the cool dawn air. Pterosaurs, the size of small aircraft, rode the thermals above the shoreline, leathery wings catching first gold. It was not paradise. It was simply Tuesday, in a world where dinosaurs answered every question evolution asked. None of these creatures knew a stopwatch had already begun ticking down toward the end of their world. None felt the object crossing Jupiter's orbit, tumbling silently through the dark. None looked up in time. The object had a name it would never hear. Astronomers 66 million years later would call it Chicxulub, 10 kilometers across, a mountain of stone and metal forged in the cold outer solar system, hurled inward. A gravitational nudge older than the dinosaurs themselves sent it inward at roughly 20 kilometers per second. 60 times faster than a rifle bullet. Fast enough to cross Earth's diameter in about 10 minutes. Its angle of approach was, in a sense, perfect. Perfect in the way a scalpel is perfect. Perfect in the way a curse is perfect. 60 degrees above the horizon. A truly devastating geometry. Steep enough to punch deep into the crust, shallow enough to spray energy across an entire hemisphere. Recent modeling suggests almost no other angle of impact would have been more destructive to life on Earth. Straight down, the wound would have been narrower. Grazing, its fury would have skipped back into space. Instead, it aimed itself like a spear at the softest, most volatile skin the planet could offer. Beneath its target lay the Yucatan Peninsula. Beneath the Yucatan, buried under a shallow tropical sea, lay bedrock. A bedrock of gypsum, a mineral saturated with sulfur, the worst substance on Earth to vaporize skyward. The impactor did not know this. The impactor did not know anything at all in its final moments. But geology had loaded the gun, and orbital mechanics was now about to pull the trigger of extinction. First contact was not a collision. It was a conversation between physics and atmosphere, and physics won in under a second. The upper air compressed against the leading face of the rock and ignited into plasma, a searing white envelope hotter than the sun. For a heartbeat, a second sun blazed above the Gulf of Mexico. Any creature turned skyward saw a new god being born. Then the stone struck the sea, and the sea did not have time to move. The water was simply erased, punched aside instantly. In that instant, energy equal to roughly 10 billion Hiroshima bombs was released. Not over years, not over hours, released all at once. The crater had not even finished forming, and the age of dinosaurs was already, mathematically, over before anyone could witness it.
A fireball climbed above the wound, brighter than anything the Mesozoic sky had ever held in 66 million years. From 1,000 kilometers away in future Texas, an animal watching saw a dome of white light swell silently above the sea. The silence would last minutes, because sound is slow and light is not. What came next would not be silent at all. The ocean, displaced by an object the size of Mount Everest, rebounded in a wave that defies all human vocabulary. Modeling suggests the initial wall of water rose more than 1.5 kilometers into the sky above the Gulf. A tsunami, taller than the highest skyscrapers ever built, raced outward, folding entire ecosystems under its curl. It scarred the seafloor to bedrock, throwing marine life onto what would one day become the Great Plains. Above the crater, an ejecta curtain of pulverized rock, molten glass, and vaporized seabed punched upward through the stratosphere. Some of it left the atmosphere entirely, arcing on ballistic trajectories, carrying burning debris to every continent on Earth. What went up would come down, and what came down would cook every living thing beneath the open sky. In North Dakota, at a place paleontologists call Tanis, the story of the first hour survives in stone forever. There, 3,000 kilometers from the impact, a quiet river ran through a peaceful forest of ancient ferns. Within 15 to 30 minutes of the strike, a massive seismic surge poured up the river valley below. Not a true tsunami, but a slosh from the shaking of the continent itself, churning water violently inland. It carried sturgeons and paddlefish far inland, choking their gills, embedded with tiny glass beads called spherules. Droplets of the vaporized Yucatan, cooled in flight, inhaled by fish in the last minutes of their lives. The earthquake that produced that surge measured by conservative estimates magnitude 11, beyond human history's comparison entirely. It cracked continental plates. It triggered landslides on the far side of the planet thousands of kilometers away. It rang the earth like a bell for days, and then the sky itself began to burn silently, because everything that had been thrown up now came back down as trillions of fragments of molten rock. Each fragment re-entered the atmosphere across the entire globe, a tiny meteor glowing white-hot from friction's heat. Individually, each was harmless. Collectively, they turned the upper atmosphere into a vast planetary broiler above everything. For roughly an hour, perhaps two, the sky above every continent radiated infrared heat downward, relentlessly, mercilessly. At intensities comparable to a domestic oven set to broil, cooking the surface of the entire dying world. Any creature exposed on open ground felt its skin begin to cook beneath the searing infrared pulse from above. Any creature standing beneath dry vegetation watched that vegetation ignite, flames leaping through forests in a single terrifying moment. Global wildfires bloomed in unison, from the redwood forest of ancient Alaska to the conifer stands of distant Patagonia. Smoke plumes joined into a single planet-spanning shroud, choking the sky above every continent with suffocating darkness. The soot layer settling into the geologic record marks a thin black line found on every continent today. In shallow epicontinental seas, mosasaurs, the great serpentine predators of the Cretaceous oceans, found their world literally boiling. The upper meters of water heated fast, oxygen fled the surface, and the giants suffocated silently in place. In the sky,
Pterosaurs, with wingspans rivaling small aircraft, fell from a superheated atmosphere, membranes scorched beyond repair. They dropped like autumn leaves onto a landscape itself catching fire, thermoregulation overwhelmed by the blast furnace above. Survival in this second hour no longer depended on size or speed or strength or armor or teeth. Survival now depended on a single trait, hiding deep beneath the surface, far from the incinerating sky above. Deep in the soil, small mammals no larger than shrews curled inside burrows lined with fur and fern. Their tunnels muffled the infrared pulse. Their damp earthen walls resisted ignition long enough to save them. Along muddy edges of rivers and swamps, ancestors of crocodiles and turtles sank beneath cool water below. In freshwater lakes, gars and paddlefish dove deep. In sea caves, ancestral lizards and snakes wedged into darkness. Small size, cool water, a ceiling of rock or earth. That was the entire strategy for outliving the Mesozoic. Above them, the great dynasties were dying. Juvenile tyrannosaurs, too large to shelter, too small to withstand the heat. Collapsed in the ash-choked lowlands, lungs filling with smoke. Herds of triceratops, disoriented by aftershocks rippling through the crust, trampled one another in blind panic. Duck-billed hadrosaurs, 100-strong migratory herds that defined the Cretaceous plains, simply vanished. In the oceans, ammonites, coiled, tentacled kings of Mesozoic seas, faced an enemy they could never swim from. The impact loaded the atmosphere with sulfur dioxide from vaporized gypsum. Rain fell as acid across the seas. The upper ocean's chemistry flipped. Shells perfect for 200 million years began dissolving on the living animals. Ammonites, plesiosaurs, entire lineages of plankton, the base and crown of marine food webs cracked in unison. By that day's end, by best current estimates, roughly 75% of all species on Earth were dying. Not over centuries, not over millennia, in 24 hours. Dawn came, but the sun refused to rise, because the true executioner was only now taking his post. Fires would burn themselves out within weeks alone. The tsunamis would subside within days. The heat pulse was already over. But high above in the stratosphere, sulfur blasted from Yucatan gypsum combined with water vapor, forming a fine mist of sulfate aerosols spreading globally.
A veil, invisible from below, catastrophic from above. That veil would remain over Earth for many long years. Sunlight tried to reach the surface and failed. What filtered through was reddish, dim, feeble, a permanent twilight the color of old blood. Photosynthesis, the engine that had powered every ecosystem for 3 billion years, sputtered and stalled across a darkening, dying planet. On land, ferns and flowering plants withered. In the oceans, phytoplankton, the invisible pastures feeding everything, collapsed within weeks. When primary producers fall, the whole pyramid falls with them. Plant eaters starved first because there was nothing left to eat. Predators starved second because there was nothing left to hunt. Scavengers thrived briefly, gorging on endless corpses, then they too vanished. The food web did not merely tremble, it unwound, thread by thread, from the bottom up, silently across every continent. Global temperatures plunged.
Estimates suggest a drop of 15 to 20 degrees Celsius across much of the planet, sustained for years. A tropical world became subarctic, almost overnight, in geologic terms. Frost reached latitudes that had not seen ice in 100 million years. Snow fell where snow had been forgotten. This is the impact winter, the long, quiet second act of the Great Extinction. The phase that finished what the fireball had started. And here, in this ash-choked freezing world, the Mesozoic officially ends. Geologists mark the boundary with a thin dark stripe found in rock layers on every continent, the KPG boundary line. Beneath that line, fossils of a lost Mesozoic world. Above it, almost nothing. A stratigraphic silence, a geologic held breath. But something small was already waking in the dark. For 150 years, scientists debated dinosaurs' extinction. Volcanoes were blamed, disease was blamed, slow, gradual decline was blamed.
Then, in 1980, everything changed forever. A father and son team, Luis and Walter Alvarez, examined a strange thin clay layer in Italy's high mountains. Inside it, they found extraordinary concentrations of iridium, a rare metal on Earth but common in asteroids. The same anomaly then appeared in Denmark, then in New Zealand, then everywhere across the globe suddenly. Modern science revealed a smoking gun buried in stone. Something from space had touched every continent simultaneously. But where was the wound hidden? For a decade, the crater eluded searchers across the entire world. Then, oil company surveys in the Gulf of Mexico revealed a vast circular gravitational anomaly beneath Yucatan. 180 kilometers across, with its center near a small Mexican town called Chicxulub, Yucatan. The crater had been hiding in plain sight, quietly covered by 66 million years of thick limestone. In 2016, an international drilling expedition punched a core into the buried peak ring. What they pulled up was a layer cake chronicling the worst day in Complex Life's entire history. Shocked quartz, melted rock, tsunami debris, and near the top, traces of ocean life returning within years. At Tanis in North Dakota, a river mouth graveyard has been carefully read like an ancient prehistoric diary. Glass spherules inside the fish gills allowed researchers to identify their exact chemistry, matching Chicxulub's ejecta perfectly. Growth patterns in those same fish bones suggested the impact struck during spring in the northern hemisphere. The last day of the Mesozoic was a spring day, bright and mild, before the star fell.
Amber droplets from the same site trapped tiny bubbles of impact-era air, sealed within minutes of impact. 66 million years later, we can almost breathe the very last living air those doomed creatures breathed. Chicxulub is no longer a theory. It is measured, cored, imaged, timed to within a single season. We know the angle, the speed, the geology beneath the wound, and why the sulfur was so catastrophic. Why this particular rock, at this particular spot, in this particular minute, ended the entire Mesozoic era. The real inheritors were waiting in the ashes. In those burrows, something small had already survived. Mammals. Small, furry, warm-blooded, nocturnal, unassuming. They had existed through the entire long reign of the mighty dinosaurs. Hiding in the seams of a dangerous world, eating insects, raising tiny litters in tiny hidden holes. They had learned to be small, to be quiet, to be quick, to be cold-tolerant and patient survivors.
In the aftermath, when the giants were gone and the sky was grey, those traits became inheritances. Alongside them, only one lineage of dinosaurs crossed the boundary. Just one, small, feathered, beaked, capable of flight. We call their descendants birds. Every sparrow, every eagle, every hummingbird alive today is a living dinosaur. A thin thread of the ancient Mesozoic still woven through our morning skies, singing softly at every dawn. When you hear a robin at dawn, you hear a lineage that watched the sky fall unblinking. The Cenozoic, our era, the age of mammals, began not with victorious trumpets, but with a hushed silence. Ash on the wind, a twilight sun, a quiet, empty world waiting for something new to rise. Over millions of years, mammals swelled into every empty niche the vanished dinosaurs had left behind them. Giant ground sloths, ancestral whales walking into the sea, saber-toothed predators prowling new plains under new stars.
And eventually us, an ape descended from a shrew that hid inside a burrow while skies burned. One day, one rock, one angle of entry, one type of bedrock, one badly timed spring morning. 4.5 billion years of planetary history bent quietly around one single, badly timed spring afternoon. Remove that asteroid, and the dinosaurs likely rule still. Remove that gypsum, and perhaps enough of them survive. That mammals never rise. Remove any single factor, and you are simply not here to hear this sentence. A lost world of the Mesozoic, sealed forever behind one thin black line drawn deep in the rocks. Behind that line, our entire lineage lies blinking awake in the dark. Next, we follow what crawled out.
If you want to keep walking through Mundo Perdido del Mesozoico, meet the giants risen from the ashes. Subscribe and continue the journey to a world that no longer exists. Activate the bell for the next chapter. In the next episode, first mammals inherit an emptied planet and become the giants of a new age. The lost world of Mundo Prehistórico is not done with us